Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the After the Frame podcast. My name is Malik, and I'm joined as always by,
Hi, I'm Matt.
and happy Labor Day weekend to everybody. This week, we have something a bit different, and we are going to be ranking the DC EU movies, the DC Extended Universe movies. Did you think that the whole Snyderverse and everything, was it a success, cut off a little bit too early and didn't get the full chance for Snyder to do his full vision, or were you just not a fan from the beginning?
I can appreciate him doing something different, but I think in terms of appealing to the overall fans of the DC universe, that was not a success. I think Warner Brothers did a good job like redeeming him with his later efforts. I think I prefer the new direction that we're stepping into now over my main issue with the DC EU is there was a plan, but it wasn't super concrete. Like they just kind of threw things at a wall and wanted to see what would stick.
Yeah, I mean, that whole universe had a lot of interference from Warner Brothers executives, which is what I think screwed it up. Whether or not you enjoy what Zack Snyder's iterations were of, some of DC's greatest characters, that's a separate argument, but at least he had his plan. He had his first Superman movie, then it went into BVS, and then he wanted to do Justice League Part 1, 2, and 3. And all Warner Brothers wanted to do was, well, how can we compete with Marvel? How can we get to the Avengers movies? How can we do all of these things? And what the MCU does so well, or did so well back then, was it took its time. It wasn't really afraid of what anybody was saying. Like sometimes they'd put out movies and critics and audiences didn't love it, like, early days of Iron Man 2 and 3 and Thor, The Dark World. They didn't really care. They had their plan and they were like, well, like it or don't like it, this is a part of the journey. And yeah, Warner Brothers did not allow Zack Snyder to do that. So a lot of different tonal shifts, a bunch of re-editing, people being brought in. They had the Justice League movie basically already done, and then that's when we're getting all these solo films, just doing it backwards, all just probably looking for money. So that was my big issue with it. I think if the executives didn't interfere that much, we'd have at least had a concrete vision. And then whether or not you liked how he handled the characters is a different thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of ironic that you mentioned the studio executive interference because now that it's changed hands to the James Gunn DCU, it doesn't look like we're getting much of that studio interference. It's just kind of like, hey, it's James Gunn and Peter Safran. They're like, James, you let him cook. Come do whatever you want with these characters. And it's definitely a more wacky, zany, out there universe compared to the dark and gritty Snyderverse. But I think from what we've seen through at least Superman, Creature Commandos, and a Peacemaker, we're in for a treat going forward.
Yeah, I think that they've obviously learned their lesson, and that's why they're allowing James Gunn and Peter Safran to kind of just have the reins on their studio and call the shots, hire the people, get the showrunners, direct what they want to direct, stuff like that. And then conversely, now, since then, Marvel's been having the issues where ever since Disney Plus popped up, now they have all these mandates to have X amount of shows and movies. So now they're suffering from the studio interference, which has kind of been screwing them up over the past few phases. So yeah, it can definitely hurt you when the executives just want to make money and they don't care about the art. It definitely makes things suffer a lot more. But I agree that just watching Peacemaker, the first episode, it seems like everything is heading into a lot more of a connected universe. Yeah, I mean, if there's nothing else you want to say about the Snyderverse, if we want to call it that, we can go straight into our last place picks.
Yeah, I think we've done enough looking forward into the future. We can dial it back to our ranks.
Right. And if you all have not seen our MCU ranking, first, go ahead and check it out. Secondly, the way that we kind of do rankings is that obviously there are going to be times where myself and Matt are going to have movies in different ranking order, and we're just going to touch on all of them as they're mentioned within somebody's ranking, so that way we don't have to talk about it twice. So just in case you guys were unfamiliar with how we do our ranking videos and everything like that. But yeah, you can kick us off with your last place pick, and then I'll say mine if it's not the same one.
Sure. Last place on my list is the first Suicide Squad. This one, to me, is just a disaster. And You can tell it was hacked apart in the editing room with scenes awkwardly stitched together. The tone is all over the place, and characters like Joker just feel completely wasted. Margot Robbie and Will Smith do their best as Harley Quinn and Deadshot, but the film around them is just incoherent. And when I look back on it, the main feeling I have is disappointment, especially knowing how much potential the original premise had.
I don't have this in last. It's close, but not. So I'll touch on it and give my thoughts on it. And this is, I think, within the universe, it's pretty early days of the universe. I think this came out the same year as Batman versus Superman. And the movies tonally couldn't be any more different. I think David Ayer originally, people are saying, oh, release the Ayer cut. It was supposed to be darker. And then they kind of, put everything together in the editing, and they tried to make it the Guardians of the Galaxy, which is just not what the Suicide Squad is in the comics. They are supposed to be handling very covert missions, things that the Justice League and other heroes wouldn't really know about, or things that wouldn't be brought to their attention. But in this movie, they're dealing with, the Enchantress and this whole giant thing that's happening, which would definitely have been brought to the attention of Superman and the rest of them that's in that universe, which is just not what the Suicide Squad is known for. But yeah, the only reason why I don't have this in last place is because despite its faults, I still had like a fun time watching it. It's like one of those movies where you just turn your brain off and you're just like, you have a fun time. Like Margot Robbie, perfect casting as Harley Quinn. The Jared Leto Joker thing, I appreciate that David Ayer just didn't want to do the same Jokers that we've seen, so he went for something different. But that Joker just didn't land for me. The same thing with, I think, a lot of people as well. I honestly think that his post-credit scene in the Zack Snyder Justice League was better than anything he had in the entirety of this Suicide Squad movie. But yeah, it's the movie itself has a bunch of characters that are being introduced for the first time, and yeah, the casting is pretty good and you have a fun time watching it, but it leaves a lot to be desired, obviously. And as I said, the shifts in tone make it feel like it's really not a part of the same universe. We just had Batman versus Superman earlier in the year, and Superman, obviously, spoiler alert, dies in that movie. And they, in the beginning, when Amanda Waller is talking about everything that Superman died and all that, it just doesn't feel like it's connected to the universe, despite the fact that Ben Affleck shows up in a few of the flashback scenes with Deadshot and Harley Quinn and everything. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it. I definitely think it's towards the bottom for sure. My bottom one is Wonder Woman 1984. Just like our MCU ranking, where I had Thor: Love and Thunder as our bottom, it's a similar reason. I just hated this movie. Like, I finished watching it and I had nothing but like just disdain and just bad feelings for it. I thought that, obviously now the memes are of, Gal Gadot with her acting or whatever. I feel like the whole movie was just her like reenacting all of those memes and just like showcasing like just the deadpan delivery of lines, no emotion behind it. And I feel like for how good like the first Wonder Woman movie for me is pretty up there in my list. I feel like this just backtracked everything and kind of made her more of a joke. And I thought that they handled the cheetah really poorly, who is probably the most famous Wonder Woman villain, and they handled her very poorly. I thought that Kristen Wiig was a big miscast, like having an SNL alum comedian being the cheetah just didn't make any sense to me. Pedro Pascal was in it as Maxwell Lord, turns into a fucking wishing rock. It just that whole movie to me, I just hated it. Wasn't entertained, didn't find it charming, just nothing from it. So that's the reason why I have it last.
I knew that was going to be your last place. So this one for me was frustrating because I wanted to love it. I have it at number 14 of 16. To me, 1980s aesthetic they went for is fun. And I actually liked Pedro Pascal's commitment to the over-the-top villain performance. But the story is such a mess, and the body swap plotline just leaves a bad taste.
Just bringing back Chris Pine, so
Yep.
ham-handed,
Yep.
so stupid.
And Gal Gadot still tries to carry herself with grace, but compared to the first Wonder Woman, this, yeah, like you said, just felt like a massive step backward.
I mean, I do say that because it was a COVID release, like this came straight to Max and everything, so maybe that had something to do with it, with the editing, and who knows during that time. But yeah, that when I saw that at home, it was around Christmas. I was like, this like ruined my holiday season almost.
I think I watched it Christmas Day with my family, And yeah, I was just like, man, I'm like, this is what we get. Like,
Yeah, at this point is when I was like, nah, the DC EU, like they got to do something. And I think this was around the time when we were hearing about The Rock coming in and trying to, so I was like, we got to do something. Like it was at this point that I was like, nah, like we can't have that. And maybe a year or two after is when in all of these movies, Wonder Woman just starts showing up as cameos and everything, and it's just her music playing the
God, that was the
yeah.
worst.
Yeah, it just this is when the wheels were falling off for me when I was watching it. As like such a big fan of the characters, I was like, "Ah, what are we doing?" So,
Yeah, no, I agree.
all right, what do you got at second for last?
So in between Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman 1984, at number 15, I have the original Justice League.
Me too. Justice League.
Justice League. This is the definition of a compromised film. You know, you can feel the clash of visions between Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon in every scene. The tone just swings wildly back and forth. The villain is weak, and the reshoots just make it visually inconsistent. Do I need to bring up Henry Cavill's?
Mustache.
Yeah, it's historically interesting as the movie that spawned, the Snyder Cut movement, but the film on its own is just lifeless and unsatisfying.
Yeah, for me, I just had a huge issue with the fact that what was it, the fourth movie in the universe was a Justice League movie. That's far too soon for me. We hadn't gotten Aquaman, we hadn't gotten Wonder Woman, we hadn't gotten the Flash, we hadn't gotten like a cyborg thing. So BVS had to like kind of set them up in an email, and then we got this movie. The whole Joss Whedon cut to this movie to me, like kind of just it was almost like the reshoots. He didn't really understand the characters. You can obviously tell the envy that Warner Brothers had with the MCU and Marvel, seeing as how Joss Whedon did the first two Avengers films, and then they say, well, Zack Snyder, obviously for very personal reasons with his daughter passing, had to step down, and they were giving him a lot of grief anyway, so he wanted to step away. So they, of course, thought of who's the guy that brought the Avengers so much success, bring in Joss Whedon. But it just the characters did not connect to me because you had like Batman, quipping and like saying jokes and everything that I was like, that's just not how Batman is. And then the Flash is just this is like the worst Flash. I hate Ezra Miller Flash. It's like it's even worse in his film because there's two of them. But like he just the things he says is like so it's like Disney Channel humor. It's so bad. Like there's like a scene where he meets a Wonder Woman for the first time, and he's like, "Hi, Barry, I'm Diana." Oh wait, that's not right. Like who the fuck writes that for the Flash, man? Like they just like so many infuriating things happen with the characters. I was not a big fan of the Surfer Bro Aquaman either. Very different than the comics. This is when I was like, okay, I watched this one in theaters, obviously, and I was like, man, like that's the Justice League I'm getting for a first live action Justice League movie. And I was so disappointed. The Zack Snyder version is way higher up in the list for me, but yeah, this one really, really upset me for sure. So I understand why you also have it at 15. Yeah. For me, after so for 14, I had Suicide Squad, which we already touched on. And then right above that at 13, I have The Flash. So why I dislike this movie so much is that I thought it was so insulting, the CGI. It was like they didn't even bother to go in and fix anything in post. They kind of just like rushed it out and said, "Oh, well, whatever, the audience is going to get what they get." And to me, I'm like that's just so stupid. So on top of it just being so visually like appalling, having like I just mentioned, the two Ezra Millers in this were just so annoying for, as our main characters. Um we have cameos from Batman and Wonder Woman. Batman in that terrible outfit, in when he's chasing the criminals through, I think it was Gotham, and then yeah, Wonder Woman just showing up, and they just have like a quick laugh, trying to make it seem like these guys are all pals and everything, but it all just seems so forced. And then this why I have it up a little higher is because I think that Supergirl was good, and then obviously having Michael Keaton back as Batman was the best part of the movie for me. I thought it was an interesting concept that Barry, obviously they were going off of the Flashpoint, and instead of it being specifically the Flashpoint where, the Atlanteans and the Amazonians are warring, and then Thomas Wayne is Batman, they go a different route, and he's just in a different universe where, Kal-El didn't survive, and it's Kara, and Zod still ends up coming and everything like that. So I thought that was interesting just with what the DCEU already had in play, but overall to me it was just a little bit too much of a joke. And yeah, as I said, this is literally what the second to last movie within the universe. It was on its dying days, so it was very inconsequential in the end.
Yeah. I'm surprised I have it higher than you. So to me, this one had potential, especially with the time travel multiverse setup. And I liked Supergirl and I liked Michael Keaton back as Batman. He really gave me some nostalgia thrills. But as you mentioned, the CGI was rough, the tone was all over the place, and the emotional beats didn't always land. Instead of being feeling like a triumphant reset for the franchise, it just came off messy and inconsistent.
I did enjoy the George Clooney joke at the end though. That was pretty funny. It had its
That was
moments
funny.
of like but overall not so good. All right, what do you got next?
So next up on my list is Shazam: Fury of the Gods.
Wow, okay.
This sequel was a big letdown after how charming the first film was. The villains feel bland, the humor feels more forced, and the heart of the family dynamic is really just underused. Instead of doubling down on what worked before, it leaned into louder, messier spectacle. It's not unwatchable, but it just feels like a waste of the potential built in the original.
I have this a little bit further up, just because I had a good time watching it. Well, as I said, like once I kind of checked out of the universe, I just started to watch these movies, not like, oh, what's it setting up for the next one? Or I knew that this universe wasn't gonna be around for much longer. Yeah, this movie is definitely a step down from the original one. I think that Zachary Levi does a good job as Shazam, and then I forget the actor who plays like the boy version, like Billy Batson. I know that a lot of people had like criticized that the two different people. He should still be the same Billy when he's an adult in Shazam, and also the same, and the Billy Batson actor kind of played him more upset and like kind of more like a an angsty teen, whereas once he's Shazam, he's like a big kid. So you have more of that in this one. This was my introduction to Rachel Zegler, and I thought she did a pretty good job. I thought that the romance that she had with Freddy was good, and then the villains, they were okay. This movie for me was just like an okay film that you can just go and have a little bit of fun with. Yeah, the jokes were sometimes forced, but some of them land just like the first one, but definitely a step down from the original. For me, up next, I actually have Birds of Prey.
Oof.
You
Okay.
have that a little higher up.
Yeah, I do.
For me, why I didn't really love this movie is that it took a lot of characters and kind of underutilized them. It had Cassandra Cain in it, and she was just like a girl used to swallow a gem or something like that. And as many people from reading comics would know, she's one of the people that turns up into Batgirl in the comics. But yeah, there's no inclination of that going on in this. It's just like some kid who like kind of knows Harley Quinn, who's just in the wrong place at the wrong time, getting tied up with the wrong stuff. So that made me a little bit like, that's a little weird dealing with that character. I think you have Margot Robbie still doing her best as like Harley Quinn. I still think the casting is great. The rest of the Birds of Prey, I feel like were very underutilized and also not introduced and spent too much time on. Ewan McGregor as Black Mask was interesting, like an interesting casting. I think he played him fine. But once again, I think this was a COVID movie or maybe came out right before the
Mhm.
shutdown, something like that. Again, very fine. The next like 4 or 5 movies I have ranked are like all very fine, not like bad movies or anything. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I don't have it that high, but I'd give it a passing score. This one to me has style to spare, and I love Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn as the anchor. The action sequences are creative and fun, and the movie, has a wild, colorful energy that's really easy to vibe with. But it never fully comes together as a cohesive story, and the supporting characters don't get as much development as I'd like, and the pacing can be uneven, but still it's entertaining and distinct in tone.
Got you. Yeah, that's fair. What do you got up next?
I have Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.
Mine too.
The sequel really struggled to capture the same energy as the first, which seems to be a reoccurring theme with these sequels. The rewrites and reshoots are noticeable, and it just feels disjointed and uninspired. Jason Momoa is still likable, but the movie never finds a clear emotional hook. It's not terrible, but it's forgettable, which is disappointing considering how bold the first one was visually.
This is literally the last movie in the DCEU, and this movie, we had already had James Gunn come out and say, "Hey, I'm taking over. We're gonna be rebooting. We have this new plan, Gods and Monsters Chapter 1." So all of that had already been out, and this movie was already post-production, so they still released it. So it just has a sense of like, I just don't care anymore because like we know we're not gonna be seeing him at Aquaman again. He obviously got cast as Lobo and Supergirl, but you just don't care anymore. So yeah, I thought that this movie was fun. The dynamic between him and Orn was fun. Black Manta showing up is always cool as well. But like as you said, very forgettable movie and another trend in this ranking, a step down from the original one that they put out. So yeah, not much else to say.
Yeah. What have you got next?
Uh, I actually have Black Adam next.
That's what I have next up as well.
Okay, good. So for me, Black Adam was not a bad movie at all. I actually thought it was better than what a lot of people were saying at the time. From what I remember, how people were ranking it and the ratings people were giving it. But obviously, we have some issues going on behind the camera with this one, where the Rock kind of wanted to be the cornerstone of DC and does not understand Black Adam's place on the totem pole of DC. Like he's a Shazam villain and he literally did not want to have anything to do with Shazam at all. Didn't want to be cameoed in the second Shazam movie or anything. Um, and then went above the DC Studios head and went straight to Warner Brothers and asked for Henry Cavill back for a post-credit scene, which led to a whole bunch of misleading stuff for poor Henry Cavill, who thought he was going to be brought back. But James Gunn, in a recent interview, like when he was doing the Superman junket, said that wasn't really his fault. He had already talked to Warner Brothers about bringing on a new Superman, and it was kind of The Rock kind of trying to play his hand and everything. But yeah, all that beside itself, like I think the movie it was fine. They introduced the Justice Society, which I think was so tacked on, seeing as how we've had this universe going on for almost 10 years now, but we've never heard mention of Amanda Waller knowing Dr. Fate and Hawkman and these other people. The only upside I think in this movie, the thing that I had no notes on, is literally Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. I thought that was a great casting. Of course, all the MCU goofies are going to be like, who's this guy? A knockoff Doctor Strange. Nope. Don't even
He's
think
an
that.
upgrade.
He's an upgrade and the OG. Don't even start. But they didn't do a great job of showing his power sets any different than the Doctor Strange movies, which I didn't love. But Pierce Brosnan was great, man. I think he was easily the best part of the movie. I forget the actor's name who plays Hawkman. He was good as well. And The Rock plays Black Adam as the stoic character with no emotion, which is fine. But like I said, the movie suffers from the stuff that's going on behind the camera and how ambitious it was trying to set up the future without knowing what the future holds. And that's why I have it lower than the others.
Yeah, I mean this movie felt like it was trying way too hard to be a game changer for DC, but it ended up feeling very generic. Dwayne Johnson is fine, but his stoic one-note performance just doesn't match the tone of the film. I thought the Justice Society had some fun moments, especially Dr. Fate, but the story just isn't compelling. It's big, it's loud, but it's hollow.
Yeah, not much else to say about that one. All right, what do you got next?
So above Black Adam, I had The Flash, which we already touched on. And above that is a very controversial one. Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice.
Yeah, I have that way higher.
Oof.
I think that I'm the controversial one. I think most people would probably have it very low like you, but I quite like that movie. But go on. We can talk about it.
So I can appreciate the ambition behind the movie. It's trying to tackle themes of power, accountability, and myth. And Ben Affleck's Batman is intimidating, and there are moments of striking visual brilliance, but the execution is just uneven. And the Martha twist undermines a lot of the drama, and the pacing just feels heavy and disjointed. It's a film I admire in parts, but I can't fully embrace it as a whole.
As I said, like I've been an apologist for this movie. I will argue with anybody that this movie is a good movie, in my opinion. It had its moments. Yeah, the Martha scene that everybody loves to bring up, I think easily could have just been changed from the whole Martha thing to just saying, he's going to kill my mother. and it would have still landed the same emotional impact. But I don't know, Zack Snyder seemed to have been very obsessed with the fact that both Batman and Superman's mothers were named Martha. I love Batfleck. I think that out of all the live action Batman that we've had, at least for a cinematic universe that's going to be up there with, Superman and going to be in the Justice League and everything, he has the look, he has the intimidation, as you said, the gravitas. I felt like the only thing I didn't love was, obviously all the killing and everything that he was doing. But that's Zack Snyder's vision, man. Like that was what he deemed was appropriate for his Batman. And that's just what we got. I think that this movie tackles a good amount of like you said, like themes of dealing with power and control. Lex Luthor being the puppet master, kind of manipulating both Superman and Batman, because they both already dislike each other so much. I think that there's a lot more good in this movie than what people give it credit for. And yeah, the Lex Luthor, Jesse Eisenberg thing is another hot topic of, people don't really like him. I thought that he was fine. They were clearly trying to go for a Lex Luthor that was basically Mark Zuckerberg, and that's why they hired Mark Zuckerberg from The Social Network. Yeah, the stark contrast between him and Henry Cavill, obviously Lex Luthor's whole thing is that he's jealous of Superman, that Superman has all this power that he could never have. And I thought that it was really done well having Henry Cavill, who's like 6'3", 200 plus pounds, and the Lex Luthor, who's like 5'6", 160 pounds, and Jesse Eisenberg. The contrast between the two of them was good. And I was honestly looking forward to Jesse Eisenberg coming back and seeing what he had next in the post-credit scene of Justice League. And of course, that never led anywhere either. But yeah, I think that this movie was good, but I understand why people dislike it.
Yeah, I mean, one of my many dislikes was Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, because you mentioned Mark Zuckerberg from The Social Network. I love The Social Network. That's a great, fantastic movie, but that's not Lex Luthor, in my opinion. I think I don't know, I hope you agree with me on this one, but I think the Luthor we got in Nicholas Hoult this year is by far superior than the one we got in the DCEU. But yeah, to me, I did not like him as Lex at all. I remember like reading and like rumors and things about potential castings for, Lex, Batman, Wonder Woman, like when that movie was in production. And I remember like names like Bryan Cranston got thrown out. That would have been a great Lex Luthor. I mean, he played Walter White Eisenberg like to perfection in Breaking
Mhm.
Bad, but no, they went with whiny Jesse Eisenberg, Lex Luthor, and I'm like,
Yeah, from Heisenberg to Eisenberg is what I remember the article saying.
yeah,
He would have been, good. He obviously had already the bald head from Breaking Bad, so it would have worked. But yeah, I'd say Nicholas Hoult did a better job. Like I think just James Gunn understands the characters from the comics a little bit better than what Zack Snyder was doing. There's like a character Wallace Keefe in this movie who is is paralyzed after the scenes from Man of Steel, and that's supposed to be Metallo in the comics, and
huh,
obviously he's not going to be Metallo. Wasn't going to be. Yeah, so it was just the DCEU throwing people's names out and not really having any plans for them. Obviously, he dies in this movie, and this movie obviously had to bring in the Justice League so that they could rush through bringing that in the next movie. So it had Wonder Woman show up for the ending scene. It brought in Doomsday. It killed off Superman in his second movie. So as I said, I enjoyed it just because it was the first time we've seen Batman and Superman on the big screen together. And so that, like, I know a lot of people were disappointed with what they got, but I was fine with it. As I said, there's a lot to like in this movie, in my opinion, but I get why it's low.
fair. What have you got next?
So above Black Adam, I had Shazam 2, which we already touched on. And then above that, I have the first Aquaman movie. So the first Aquaman movie to me is the definition of just playing it safe. I felt like it was, it kind of had like the origin story of what goes on with Arthur Curry and everything. It explains everything to the audience just because within everybody's mind, Aquaman's this joke. He talks to fish. He's not helpful to the Justice League unless they're near water or whatever. But Aquaman is actually so much more if you read his character in the comics. And I just I just never really fell in love with the portrayal from Jason Momoa. I just didn't really like the whole bro surfer Aquaman. It just never really clicked with me. And then also his reluctance to really help people, it seemed like, within this film. But I loved Willem Dafoe in it. I thought that Patrick Wilson was good as Orn. And then it sets up Black Manta, who's one of my favorite DC villains. Obviously, he comes back in a bigger way in the second one, but I thought that he was good in it too. It had like pretty good effects for, all the CGI and everything. But yeah, as I said, it like played it safe. It was like, nothing too special of a superhero film in my opinion. That's why I don't have it higher.
Where do you have that ranked numerically?
Eighth.
Okay. I have it sixth, and my opinions are a little different.
Okay.
In my opinion, this is a ridiculous movie, but I can't help but enjoy it. I thought that James Wan went full comic book spectacle, and it works in its own, over the top way. I thought in this one, James Jason Momoa has great screen presence, and I mean the visuals, especially the trench sequence and Atlantis, they're just fun to look at. It is messy and it's goofy, but I thought it embraced that energy unapologetically, which, in my opinion, makes it easy to rewatch.
Yeah, and I feel like you need to lean into the goofiness for an Aquaman movie because if you're trying to take it too seriously, then you're gonna find yourself in some problems. But I can understand where you're coming from with that. How I see it is that this movie made $1 billion, and I don't think it's $1 billion movie. I feel like it was a little overhyped in my opinion. It was good, but nothing
Yeah,
nothing to cry home about.
I can agree with you on that.
Yeah. All right, what do you got up next?
Let's see. So we touched on BVS, we touched on Birds of Prey. So up next, I have what I actually thought was a pleasant surprise, a Blue Beetle.
Okay.
What I really liked here was the heart. The Reyes family just makes the movie. They're funny, warm, and so easy to root for. I cared about Jaime's journey because it wasn't just about him, it was about the family dynamic surrounding them. The villain is forgettable, and the plot itself is pretty standard superhero origin stuff, but the cultural specificity and the humor make it stand out enough to feel fresh, in my opinion.
This movie came out during a time where people were like, we don't know if this is James Gunn's DCU. Is this the DCEU? Obviously, we both ranked it in the DCEU, but it doesn't have any specific references or cameos from anybody from the previous films. Yeah, I liked the visuals of this movie. I thought like everything looked really cool. The scene where the scarab is taking over him and everything was really well done. Yeah, as you said, the family is what makes this movie. It just like the warm-heartedness of all of them coming together in the end to help out Blue Beetle, and yeah, the villain was very meh, and that portion is where maybe the film fell off a little bit, but yeah, I was also pleasantly surprised with this one. I was surprised how much I was laughing in the theater and having such a good time with, as you said, this family dynamic, and it made me just want to see them again. It sets up something with Ted Cord, Blue Beetle, and then obviously now James Gunn is taking Blue Beetle into his universe. I don't know how he'll handle that. And then we got Booster Gold, who's also ties into Blue Beetle as well. So we'll see where that goes, but I'm excited to see them again. Hopefully they come back in DCU. But yeah, 100% agree that this is a pleasant surprise. Is it me next? All right. So above Aquaman, I have Shazam, the first one. So I had that just underneath Blue Beetle. So since we already touched on Blue Beetle, yeah, the first Shazam movie. This came out 2019, so this was a few years into the DCEU now. Still not finding their footing, not really knowing what movies seem like they're a part of the universe or not. This movie, to me, I've never been a huge Shazam fan, but I really had a fun time with this one. The kid actors in it are great, and then as I said previously, Zachary Levi is a pretty good Shazam. Having Dr. Savannah as the first villain was good instead of having it be Black Adam or something. All the aspects of this were just a fun movie. Like it's just the concept of what if you gave a kid superpowers? Like what would he be doing? And you really feel that lightheartedness and what Zachary Levi is trying to do. It's a little goofy here and there, but it all lands for me. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I mean, this one works so well because it never tries to be bigger than it needs to be. I like that it's funny, it's heartfelt, and it's grounded in the family dynamics. And yeah, Zachary Levi, he brings a lot of charm, and the foster family subplot, really adds some heart. It does feel smaller in scope compared to other DCEU films, but I say that in a good way. It's breezy, it's fun, and it's self-aware without being cynical.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. What do you got up next?
So let's see. Blue Beetle was number 7. Aquaman was number 6. So I had Shazam at 4.
Okay,
At number 5, I have Man of Steel.
same here.
Man of Steel, I have mixed feelings about this one, but overall, I do respect what Snyder was going for. The darker, mythic tone makes Superman feel otherworldly, and Zimmer's score is incredible. I love the way that the film frames Clark as an alien first, struggling with his identity. That said, the destruction in the third act is excessive and numbing, but the ambition and the boldness win me over more often than not.
I can understand that as well. Why I have this movie ranked so high is because, firstly, it's the beginning of it all. Michael Shannon as General Zod. Those are like my two favorite things about the movie. That it had that sense of like a fresh new beginning for what I mean back in 2013. What I thought would be like this long DC universe that ends up getting cut off, and then now we start with James Gunn. But it gave you a sense of like, oh, now we're gonna have what Marvel has as DC fans. So I really enjoyed it in that aspect. And then obviously Michael Shannon as Zod. But I don't think it handled characters great. Like how Zack Snyder views Superman as like kind of this character who's like tortured, and it's not everybody's gonna like it. Obviously it was very polarizing even to this day, and it just kind of ruined Jonathan Kent for me as well. I think that his portrayal, or the character, exactly, he was so gung-ho to make Superman not save people because he's afraid that people would know about him or whatever, to the point where he literally lets himself die in a tornado because he didn't want Superman to save him. That like didn't land for me, and I don't love the chemistry between Lois Lane and Clark in this movie, and it doesn't really improve as the movies go on. I think that Rachel Brosnahan and David Cornsweet within their one movie have a lot more chemistry between the two of them than all the movies that Henry Cavill and Amy Adams have in all the movies they're in.
Easily,
So
easily
yeah,
better.
it has that, and the fight scenes are good. The whole Metropolis thing at the end, as you said, with all the destruction, I thought leaned in well to what like the consequences in BVS. Like they're obviously setting up like that. Yeah, Superman creates all this destruction, but he needs to have consequence. That's like what they were going with in the universe. And then that changed obviously. But yeah, Henry Cavill as Superman, he has the look. He plays him well. He's got the size on him. Yeah, I thought that this was a fun, optimistic start to the DCEU, and of course, it wasn't Henry Cavill's fault or Zack Snyder's fault necessarily, but yeah, things kind of crash and burn. But those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, those all make sense.
Where do we leave off? So I had said Shazam. Above that, I have Blue Beetle. We said Man of Steel. I also have at fifth, and then fourth, I have BVS. So obviously we have the same top three. It's just a matter of what way that we have them. For me, number three is Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman movie. I thought that just based on the little glimpse you get of her in BVS, I knew nothing of Gal Gadot until I saw her in BVS, but I was like, wow, this is like the perfect casting for Wonder Woman. Like she has this great look to her that looks just like how I would imagine Wonder Woman on the big screen being.
Kal-El, no.
Yeah, that was before all of that.
Oh, I know.
But yeah, I've never been a huge Wonder Woman fan either. Same with like Shazam and a few of the other heroes. But this movie, it showed the mascara. It takes place World War I, and it kind of has Diana being like this fish out of water, but also working with Steve Trevor and all of his fellow soldiers and helping them come along and fight off what they got going on in World War One. I thought that it was relatively basic in some regards, with like its humor and its attempt at things of that nature. But in others, I was like pleasantly surprised. The only drawback I didn't love was the whole final reveal for Ares, and that whole fight scene wasn't great. But overall, this movie was what I kind of wanted out of my solo films from the heroes of the DCEU. But unfortunately, that's not always what we were getting.
You said you have that at 3?
Yes.
Huh, you threw me for a loop there. So I have it at 2.
Okay. Not
This
too shabby.
this was the first time I felt like DC really nailed the modern superhero origin story. As you mentioned, Gal Gadot embodies Wonder Woman with such sincerity, and the World War One setting, gave the movie a gravity that most superhero movies don't attempt. In my opinion, the No Man's Land sequence is still one of the best scenes in the entire genre. But as you touched on, the ending CGI battle just felt weaker, but the rest of the film was so strong and inspiring that it holds up as one of DC's best.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So what do you got at number 3 then?
See, this might be where we differ. So at number 3, I have Zack Snyder's Justice League. I knew that was coming. So I did thoroughly enjoy this film, and I didn't expect to enjoy a 4-hour superhero film this much, but Snyder's cut just completely changed my perspective on Justice League. Characters actually have arcs. The story makes sense and the visuals feel coherent. I especially liked how Cyborg was finally given depth and importance. It's indulgent, sure, but it finally felt like the payoff to years of setup, and I couldn't help but admire the scale and vision compared to the theatrical mess.
So Zack Snyder's Justice League for me is number 1. I love this movie. It came out, I remember I watched it, like 2 hours of it, went to work, came back and watched the other 2 hours. It definitely is a long sit through or a sit down, but the good thing about it being straight on streaming is that you can stop it and come back to it whenever you want. But this handled the characters so much more in the vein of what I wanted from the theatrical version. Obviously, movies can't be 4 hours, so he was going to have to cut some of this stuff out, but it handled the characters so much more. As I said, Batman wasn't quipping. He toned down the annoyance of Ezra Miller as the Flash. And then, yeah, they put Cyborg basically as the main character driving the film with his relationship with his father and then the mother boxes and everything. And because it was 4 hours, as you said, everybody got a chance to have an arc. You got to really see Zack Snyder's actual vision for what he wanted the universe to be. And you get a bunch of scenes that you don't get to see in the theatrical version where you have, the Flash and Iris West in, meeting, and you have like just certain other like cool scenes that I thought were like nice little tidbits added in to the runtime. And even though it's 4 hours, it felt like I was just watching like a season of like a TV show. I just like watched one part, came back and watched another part. And because you've already seen the theatrical version, it's not like there's anything that you're gonna be like surprised about. It's the same plot basically. They add Darkseid into the movie. Desaad is there, Granny Goodness is there. You get to see Apocalypse, and then the post credit scenes of Batman's nightmare, where like Superman is obviously taken over by the anti life equation, and he's having to team up with Deathstroke and Queen Mara and the Joker and the Flash and all these people, and then you see Martian Manhunter come in. It just really made me feel like, man, this is kind of what we missed out on. This is what Zack Snyder kind of wanted everything to go towards. At that point, he was planning a Lantern show, which obviously we're getting now in James Gunn's DCU, but we were going to have the Lanterns come in as well, and then it was going to be this 3-part epic Justice League story where, they lose and Lois Lane dies. It was gonna be like so much more, and we never got a chance to see it, but it made me want more. And yeah, I thought it was just this 4-hour epic that I really enjoyed out of all the movies that we talked about so far.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
And then yeah, there's only one movie left that you would have at 1, and I have at 2. It is James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. You can say your thoughts first.
Yeah, well, I think the best way to open here is to kind of dial back to how we opened. We mentioned last on my list is the original Suicide Squad, and Warner Brothers tried swinging that to be their version of the Guardians of the Galaxy, which didn't work. This one, it's like, hey, let's bring in a director who knows what he's doing. And funny enough, it's James Gunn, who did the Guardians of the Galaxy. He understands that this cast and crew of characters is not the same thing, and yet he delivers all the same. This one is my clear favorite of the DCEU because James Gunn brought exactly the kind of energy that I wanted. It was chaotic, it was violent, but it was also surprisingly heartfelt. I love how he took ridiculous characters like Polka Dot Man and Ratcatcher 2, and he actually made me actually care about them. The humor hits, the action is inventive, and the balance between irreverence and sincerity just feels spot on. It's not just fun, it's one of the only DCEU films that feels like it has a true creative identity.
This movie for me, I think this was also a HBO Max release, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, the only downside that I say I disagree with you on is, for me, the comedy didn't land so much for me. And that's just how it is with me and James Gunn. Sometimes his stuff to me is like very good and very funny. But sometimes I think he does a little bit too much, and this movie was kind of leaning on the too much for me. But once again, yeah, we're dealing with a director who has had a bunch of experience with ragtag groups in the Guardians of the Galaxy. which is kind of what the Suicide Squad is. And what I appreciated about this one in comparison to the first one we mentioned earlier on in the video is that, like I said, the Suicide Squad is not supposed to be dealing with things that the Justice League is supposed to be dealing with. This was a clear covert mission, a little hush hush. What was it, Starro or Project Star or
Mhm.
something like that? That the government was trying to keep hush to the point where Peacemaker has to end up killing Rick Flag over it because Amanda Waller has told him to make sure that that does not get out. And that's what the Suicide Squad is meant to be for. They're using these criminals in prison and threatening them with detonators in their necks, and they need to be doing stuff that the government, doesn't know about, like all these covert missions. So I appreciated that. Like as you said, James Gunn has this way of whatever character he's dealing with, he makes you care about them. And even Ratcatcher 2, whether it's Bloodsport, Peacemaker, all of these characters have this troubled past and they all gel together so well. And then you throw in their fan favorite in Harley Quinn, who's already been established in the universe, and makes for a very great film. Tons of rewatchability. One of the characters so popular that a whole spin off series of his, and now he's also in the DCU. Yeah, very little complaints for me. I'd say that probably my biggest complaint was the humor I felt. But other than that, I thought the visuals were very good. And yeah, the story was very compelling.
Yeah, no, I think those are all great points. And yeah, I agree with you.
That's our ranking of the DCEU now. So now we've ranked both this and the MCU. We'll have to see. We plan on doing more of these ranking videos on off weeks. So you guys just make sure to let us know what you'd like to hear from us and see us rank next. Or we're open to ideas. So you have any final thoughts before we
Uh
close out?
no, just, thanks everybody for listening. Maybe, 10, 12, 15 years down the line we'll have to do a DCU ranking.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll see how far that goes. But yeah, this is our ranking. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let us know what you agree with, what you don't agree with, and feel free to send us your rankings of the MCU and the DCEU as well. We'd love to see them. So yeah, take care. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks everybody.
Bye bye.